So we need to abolish NATO to keep the peace in Europe. And there are a number of reasons to abolish NATO. The first of which is it is no longer has any real strategic function. During the Cold War, it made sense to have NATO because the Soviet Union had its own set of alliances. It had now technically the Western Bloc was part of the Soviet Union, but there were also nations that weren't part of the Soviet Union. Essentially, there were a large number of nations that were involved with the Soviet Union in a military alliance that kept them very close together strategically. So it made sense for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to form for those nations that were aligned with the US's side to all be in a mutual defense style agreement. But when the Soviet Union collapsed and all those nations became independent, essentially all the guns that were pointing from the Soviet Union to NATO stopped being pointed in that direction for the most part. But all the guns that were pointed towards the Soviet Union and its successor states were still there. There, of course, was an obvious solution to this problem, which was just to say, hey, Russia and successor states, if you want, you can be part of NATO, because now NATO just serves for everyone's mutual defense. It isn't ideological. It isn't national. It isn't against a particular nation. It was against the Soviet Union, but the Soviet Union's gone, so hey, fine, whatever. We're all kind of on the same team here, so if you want to join, you can join. But that was not on the table. And then promises were made to the Russians that, hey, we are going to keep this NATO thing around, but don't worry about it because we're not going to expand anywhere closer to you. Obviously, that was a lie, and we have seen over the decades that NATO has moved closer to Russia in terms of proximity of which countries have joined and which countries are trying to join. So if you just abolish NATO, honestly, we should have done it back in '92. But if you were to abolish it now, if everyone was to kind of go their separate ways, then you remove a lot of the pressure, because then you no longer have the organization of gun pointing, as it were, pointing in the direction that they were during the Cold War. And Russia, don't get me wrong, Russia very much feels the effects of the guns constantly be pointing at them. In fact, you could argue that it's one of the reasons that Russia is doing what it's doing right now, is because it feels that pressure of a bunch of nations who are working together, many of which are nuclear armed, continuing to point their guns at Russia. And by the way, lest we forget that I think it was just 10 years ago now, there were missile silos put in Poland that were for Poland's defense, but were honestly all pointed in the Russian direction. Not physically, obviously, because they point straight up, but the geopolitical implication was that they were pointed at Russia. So you get to this circumstance where all of a sudden you continue to make aggressive actions at Russia, and all of this is being powered by the existence of NATO. So if we really want to keep peace on the European continent, we should just get rid of NATO, and we should establish a new treaty organization of some kind that is generally inclusive of everyone who is on the European continent, if that's the direction they want to go, and is not ideological, and is also not a hostile relic of the past. NATO was born to be hostile. It always has been hostile. It will always be hostile towards the East, whether that's Russia or nations that are close to Russia. We are always going, it will never not be an inherently violent and provocative nation. If we want to keep the peace in Europe from now until the next major crisis, or the next set of contrived crises, whatever it is, we need to abolish NATO. It's time. It served its purpose, but it's gone now. And it should have died with the Soviet Union. We still have a chance. We can still get rid of NATO. We need to abolish NATO.
Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread and you'll find all of our content. Alright guys, see you next time. Bye for now.